I was 7 months pregnant when my mother-in-law handed me a cup of chamomile tea and said, "You really shouldn't be driving in your condition, sweetheart." I smiled and said thank you. I didn't know that was the beginning of the end of my independence. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I love knowing who's part of this community. The morning my sister found me was a Tuesday in late October. I was walking along the service road behind the Kroger on Millfield Avenue, wearing flip-flops because my feet had swollen and I couldn't get my sneakers on, pushing my 8-month-old daughter in a stroller with a wobbly front wheel. The sky was that flat gray that means rain in about 40 minutes. My phone was dead. I had $12 in my coat pocket. The coat that used to be mine but that my mother-in-law had once casually remarked looked a little worn for public. My sister was driving back from a morning shift at the hospital. She spotted me from 2 lanes over, did a U-turn that probably wasn't legal, and pulled up alongside me with her window already down. "Why are you walking?" she said. Not even hello. Just that. Her eyes went from me to the stroller to my feet to the dark circles under my eyes that I'd stopped trying to cover with concealer because we'd run out and I hadn't been able to go buy more. I looked at her. I hadn't cried in 3 months. Not because I wasn't sad. Because crying felt like something I wasn't allowed to do anymore, and I'd internalized that so completely I'd stopped feeling the urge. But standing there on that service road with the wind picking up and my daughter gnawing on the strap of the stroller, something cracked. "He said I'm not stable enough to drive," I said. "His mother says the keys." My sister put the car in park right there in the lane. The inside of her car smelled like coffee and the lavender hand lotion she keeps in the cup holder. I strapped my daughter into the back, folded the stroller into the trunk, and sat down in the passenger seat. The heated seat clicked on automatically. I hadn't been warm in what felt like weeks. "How long?" my sister said. She didn't look at me right away. She was gripping the steering wheel with both hands, and I recognized the look on her face. She's an ER nurse. She's used to walking into situations and having to assess them fast and stay calm no matter what she's seeing. She was doing that now, assessing me. "Since Cora was about 3 months old," I said. She let out a breath through her nose, slow and controlled. "That's 5 months, Lena." "I know." "Why didn't you call me?" I looked out the windshield at the parking lot. A woman was loading groceries into a minivan, a completely normal Tuesday morning for a completely normal person. "Because it didn't feel like something I could explain," I said, because every time I tried to explain it in my head it sounded crazy. Like, my husband took my car keys and his mother lives in our guest room, and I'm not allowed to use the joint checking account anymore. That's what it sounds like. And people hear that and they think, okay, so leave. And I couldn't make anyone understand why I couldn't just leave. My sister turned to look at me. "Make me understand," she said. "We've got time." So I tried. I told her it didn't start with the keys. It started with a casserole. My mother-in-law. I'd always called her by her first name, Renee, though she'd never seemed particularly warm about it. Showed up 3 days after Cora was born with a casserole dish and a rolling suitcase. "Just for a few weeks," she said. "You're going to need help." And I was exhausted in a way I hadn't known was possible, so I said, "Okay." My husband, his name is Brett. He'd been talking about his mother coming to help for months. "She raised 3 kids, babe. She knows things we don't." That seemed reasonable. It seemed like exactly the kind of support a new mother was supposed to want. The first thing Renee did was reorganize the kitchen. She didn't ask. I came downstairs at 2 in the morning to heat up a bottle and couldn't find anything. All the cabinets were different. "I found a system that works better," she told me the next morning, cheerful, pouring coffee like it was her kitchen. "You'll get used to it." I told myself it was fine. She was trying to help. Then it was the finances. Brett had always handled most of the bills. He works in commercial real estate. He's good with numbers, and I'd been doing freelance graphic design work that wasn't exactly steady income. But after Cora was born, and I stopped taking clients for a while, he suggested we consolidate everything into one account just to simplify things. He'd manage it, I could focus on the baby. I said okay. I said thank you. I was so tired. A few weeks later, I went to buy diapers online and my card was declined. Brett said he'd move things around and would fix it, just use the card in the kitchen drawer. I started using that card. It had a low limit. If I spent more than about $60 at a time, it declined. I stopped buying things that weren't strictly necessary. I told my sister about the driving thing and watched her expression stay very carefully neutral, the way she does when she's listening to a patient describe symptoms. It started after I had a fender bender in the Walgreens parking lot. Nothing serious. I tapped the bumper of a parked car at about 3 miles an hour, left a note, the other driver called. Insurance handled it, done. But Brett brought it up constantly after that. You're not sleeping enough to drive safely, babe. Your reaction time is off. You can't even hear me when I'm talking to you. Renee echoed it. Honestly, Lena, I worry every time you get in that car. You seem scattered. And I was scattered. I was sleep-deprived and anxious, and I'd been feeling off since the birth in ways I hadn't fully processed. So when they said it, part of me believed them. Part of me thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not okay. The keys disappeared about 6 weeks after the accident. Brett said he'd put them somewhere safe. When I asked for them, he said, when you're feeling more like yourself. And I didn't fight it because fighting felt like proving their point. If I pushed back, I was erratic. If I raised my voice, I was unstable. The cage was built so that any attempt to escape it just made the bars tighter. My sister had gone very still in the driver's seat. Lena, she said, do you know what coercive control is? I said I'd heard the term. What they did to you is textbook, she said. The isolation, the financial control, the undermining your confidence in your own judgment. That's not a difficult marriage. That's abuse. The word landed in my chest like something heavy dropped from a height. I knew it was true. I'd known it for a while. But hearing it said out loud by someone I trusted, someone who wasn't going to walk it back or add, but I'm sure he loves you, it did something. It made it real in a different way. I can't just leave, I said. Cora, if I leave without a plan, I don't know what he'll do. He has more money than me. He has a lawyer friend from college. His mother will say whatever he needs her to say. I've been terrified that if I walk out the door without the right documentation, without a plan, I'm going to lose her. My sister looked at me for a long moment. Then she said, good thing your little sister has been waiting tables since she was 15 and knows how to stay calm under pressure. What do you need? I didn't cry. I just felt something in my chest loosen, like a knot that had been pulling tight for months, finally had some slack. I need to go back, I said. But I need to go back correctly. She put the car in drive. We sat in the parking lot of a Panera, 2 blocks from the house, for 45 minutes while she called our aunt, who had been through her own divorce 12 years ago, and now volunteers with a domestic advocacy organization, and I made a list of everything I needed. Documents, financial records, Cora's birth certificate, her pediatric records, my own ID, our marriage certificate, my laptop. The folder I'd been building for 2 months under the bathroom sink, behind the extra rolls of toilet paper, in a waterproof zip bag. The folder Renee never touched because I had a thing about bathrooms that weren't her own. That folder. Let me tell you about that folder. I'd started it in August, 2 months earlier, after I overheard a phone conversation between Brett and his mother through the vent in the hallway. The old house had vents that carried sound in strange directions, and I heard him say, she's not going to do anything. She doesn't have any money and she doesn't have anywhere to go. Casual, like he was explaining a practical situation, not talking about his wife. I went back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed for a long time. Then I started paying attention differently. I started screenshotting things. Bank transfer notifications I wasn't supposed to notice. A credit alert on an account I hadn't opened. I'd signed up for a free credit monitoring service using an email address I created on my phone on the Notes app so there'd be no browser history. The alert said there was a new account opened in my name at a regional bank I didn't recognize. I looked it up. It was a personal loan for $32,000. I hadn't signed anything. I printed nothing. There was no printer I could use without Brett or Renee noticing. So I took photos with my phone, then airdropped them to an old iPad that had been in a box in the closet since I got a new one 2 years ago, and that I'd quietly reactivated on airplane mode. No Wi-Fi, just to have somewhere to store things they couldn't see. The iPad lived in the zip bag with everything else. I found the car paperwork in September. Brett had sold my car, a 2019 Honda CR-V, that had been mine before we got married, that I'd made the last 3 payments on myself to a dealership in the next county. The bill of sale was in the filing cabinet in the home office, which Brett kept locked but for which the key lived in a terracotta pot on the 3rd shelf of the bookcase. I'd found the key by accident 6 months earlier while looking for a pen. I'd never used it. In September, I used it. I photographed every page of every document I could find that had my name on it. The car had sold for $9,400. The money had gone into an account I couldn't access. My sister listened to all of this without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "You've been gathering evidence." I was scared if I left without it I wouldn't be believed, I said. I didn't want to be the wife who left and couldn't prove anything. I wanted to walk out with enough that no one could gaslight me about what happened. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Here's what we're going to do." We went in together. I want to be clear about something. I was terrified. My hands were shaking when we turned onto our street. The house looked the same as always. The flower beds Renee kept immaculate. The sedan in the driveway, the recycling bins lined up exactly right. Everything perfectly arranged on the outside. Brett was in the living room when we walked in. Renee was in the kitchen. I could hear the sounds of her reorganizing something, drawers opening and closing, the familiar soundtrack of her constant adjusting of my home. Brett stood up when he saw my sister. "What is she doing here?" he said, looking at me, not at her. "She's here with me," I said. I was surprised by how steady my voice was. "I need my car keys." His expression did the thing it always did when I asked for something he didn't want to give, a split-second flash of irritation that he covered immediately with concern. "Lena, we've talked about this. You've been really overwhelmed lately, and until we see some improvement." "The keys," I said. "And Cora's documents, her birth certificate, and her insurance cards, and my passport." Renee appeared in the doorway from the kitchen. She was wearing an apron. She looked at my sister with an expression I can only describe as weaponized pleasantness. "Oh, how nice," she said. "Is this a visit? Should I put on coffee?" My sister didn't take the bait. She dealt with a lot of difficult people in the ER. She had a talent for staying very still and very polite in a way that wasn't actually either of those things. "We're just here to get a few things," my sister said. "Lena, go ahead." I went upstairs. My legs felt strange, like they belonged to someone else. I went to the bathroom first and got the zip bag. Then to Cora's room and packed her diaper bag with twice what I needed. Then to the bedroom. I moved fast and I didn't fold anything. I'd been rehearsing this in my head for 2 months, and I didn't let myself stop to think, just moved through the checklist I'd memorized. Downstairs, I could hear voices. Brett's voice, then my sister's, then Renee's, then my sister's again. The tone was controlled. No one was shouting. I came back downstairs with Cora on my hip and 2 bags over my shoulder. Brett was standing at the bottom of the stairs. He looked at the bags. His expression had shifted into something colder. "You're not taking her," he said. "She's my daughter," I said. "I'm her mother. I'm leaving with her. I'll call the police." "Then call them," my sister said from behind him. Her voice was completely level, and while we wait, we can discuss the personal loan opened in Lena's name in August, and the car that was sold without her consent. She has the paperwork. Brett turned to look at her. "You have no idea what you're talking about," he said. $32,000, my sister said. Regional Credit Union of Western Ohio. Account number ending in 7741. Opened August 14th in your wife's name. She didn't sign the application. Renee made a sound from somewhere behind him. A small, sharp intake of breath. Brett's face changed. It wasn't guilt, exactly. It was the face of someone recalculating. I stepped around him. I didn't push past, didn't run, just walked with my daughter on my hip and my bags on my shoulder, out the front door and into the gray October morning. My sister was behind me 30 seconds later. She'd paused just long enough to pick up the diaper bag I'd left by the door. We drove to her apartment. She made soup from a can and we sat on her kitchen floor. She doesn't have a table, just a breakfast bar with one stool and a beanbag chair, and I laid out everything from the zip bag while Cora crawled around between us pulling the tags off the soup can. The scope of it took about an hour to fully map. The car sale, $9,400, transferred to an account I hadn't known existed. The personal loan in my name, $32,000, most of it transferred in chunks to what appeared to be a business account belonging to Renee. A credit card in my name I hadn't opened, balance of $11,200, all charges at home improvement stores, and a furniture outlet in the 3 months before Renee moved in. My 401(k). I'd rolled it over from a previous job when I changed employers 2 years ago. The new account had been set up with Brett as the authorized manager for convenience. The current balance was $4,000. It had been $41,000 when I rolled it over. My sister sat very quietly while I read the numbers out loud. When I finished, she said, "Okay. First thing tomorrow's morning, we call the attorney our aunt recommended. Tonight you sleep here. I'll take the couch." "You don't have to." "Lena." She looked at me. "I'm a mandatory reporter. Do you understand what I'm saying? As a nurse, I am legally required to report suspected abuse. I don't need your permission. But I'd rather do this with you than around you. So let's do it together." I looked down at Cora, who had fallen asleep on the kitchen floor with her face pressed against my ankle. I hadn't let myself cry in 3 months. The faucet opened then, not dramatic sobbing, just tears running down my face while I sat on my sister's kitchen floor, and my daughter slept against my leg, and the soup got cold in the bowls. The attorney our aunt referred us to had handled 3 domestic financial abuse cases in the past 2 years. She was a small woman in her late 50s, with reading glasses on a beaded chain and a directness that I immediately trusted. She looked at the documents for 40 minutes without speaking. Then she looked at me. "This is wire fraud," she said, "and identity theft. And depending on how the loan application was filed, we may be looking at federal charges." Brett had apparently assumed that a wife who had no money, no car, no income, and no confidence left would never be organized enough to have gathered this kind of documentation. He'd assumed wrong. The attorney sent a certified letter. It laid out what we had. It laid out what we were prepared to file and where. It offered a single alternative: full financial restitution within 30 days, voluntary cooperation with dissolution proceedings, and no contest on custody. Brett's response arrived through his own attorney 4 days later. It was a long letter full of language about marital assets and contested claims and his intention to demonstrate my history of instability. My attorney's response was 2 paragraphs. The second paragraph was a list of the exact statutes under which we intended to file criminal charges, and the name of the federal prosecutor she'd already contacted to discuss the loan application. The long letter stopped. The negotiation began. 6 weeks later, I signed a settlement agreement. Restitution for the car. Restitution for the 401(k). Withdrawals. The fraudulent loan was contested and ultimately cleared from my credit. A process that took another 3 months and required me to file an identity theft report with the FTC and send certified letters to 3 credit bureaus, but it got done. Renee was not charged, though the settlement included language about the transfers to her account. Our attorney told me that civil restitution was more realistic than a criminal conviction for a woman in her 60s with no prior record, and a son willing to take the fall for her. I wasn't satisfied with that, but I understood it. Joint custody was established with primary physical custody to me. Brett sees Cora on alternating weekends. She's too young to understand any of it, which is its own kind of mercy. I moved into a 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town in January. 2nd floor, windows face east, so the mornings are bright. I painted the kitchen a color called soft sage because I wanted to, and no one had an opinion about it. I have a table now. A second-hand farmhouse table from Facebook Marketplace that my sister and our cousin dragged up the stairs in pieces. We had pizza on the floor the first night because the chairs hadn't arrived yet. I went back to freelance design work slowly. A logo here, a brand identity there. Enough to cover the gap between what Brett pays in child support and what my half of the rent costs. Not comfortable yet, but mine. My sister calls every other morning on her drive to work. She talks about her patients in the vague, HIPAA-compliant way she always has, and I tell her about whatever Cora did the night before. And we complain about the same things we've complained about since we were kids. It's ordinary. It's the most valuable thing I have. What I want to say, if you're somewhere in what I was describing at the beginning of this, if you're reading your own life into the part about the keys and the credit card, and the feeling that your judgment can't be trusted, is that the thing that kept me trapped wasn't stupidity. I want to be clear about that because I used to lie awake at 2 a.m, asking myself how I'd let it happen, how I'd been so blind, what was wrong with me. Nothing was wrong with me. I was running on no sleep and actively undermined confidence in a relationship with someone I'd trusted completely. The trap was designed to work on people who weren't stupid. It was designed to work on people who were trying to be good partners and good mothers and good enough. The folder under the sink was the thing that saved me. But I don't say that to suggest you need a perfect plan before you reach out for help. I reached out to my sister by accident, on a service road, in flip-flops, because I ran out of other options. Sometimes it goes that way. Sometimes the moment you reach out isn't the moment you planned. The only thing that matters is that it happens. Cora is 14 months old now. She's in that phase where she points at everything and says a version of the word, that, like she's cataloging the world for the first time. Every morning she points at the east-facing windows when the light comes in and says it. Dat. Yeah, I tell her. That's ours.